The Old Dogs REI Network podcast is sponsored by Health IQ, an insurance company that helps health-conscious people like runners, cyclists, weightlifters, and vegetarians get lower rates on their life insurance. Go to healthiq.com/old dog. That's healthiq.com/old dog to see if you qualify.
This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manacero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manacero, and this is the show where 50-plussers and anyone else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes, type in Old Dog, spelled D-A-W-G, find our podcast, and subscribe. Well, we've got another great show for you today. Today, our guest is Todd Dexheimer, a former high school shop teacher who started investing in real estate in 2008, mainly in single-family homes and small multifamily properties. In 2016, he rebranded his company into Venture D in order to syndicate commercial and multifamily properties. Since 2008, Todd has purchased and renovated nearly 300 properties. Currently, Todd owns approximately 350 units located in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Lexington, Kentucky, and Cincinnati, Ohio. Well, Todd, welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network.
Thanks for having me, Bill. Appreciate it.
Well, it's great to have you on. I mean, you're not an old dog, but you got some stuff that can maybe teach a few of us old dogs some new tricks. So we're excited to have you on, and I really want to hear about this. This is really interesting that you were a shop teacher. Started off teaching wood, and I loved wood shop was my favorite. When I was in junior high, that was like the best. I made the the tie racks, you put the nails in there and you hang your ties on, and boxes and fun. And that was a kick. It was really a kick. But you've been all over that, and it sounds like you did a lot of different things besides just woodworking and, as a shop teacher. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about how you got into real estate from being a teacher?
Yeah. So, being a teacher was fun. I was that kid in high school that could make a piece of crown molding for your ceiling off the table saw. So I had some skills in that. And I thought, well, let's teach other people how to do that. But after I taught for a while, it just wasn't fulfilling like I expected. And, the income is not great. So I needed to grow up and figure out what I wanted to do. And so how I got into real estate was simply reading books and just getting excited about being a entrepreneur. I was reading a lot of the Robert Kiyosaki books. I would pick up random real estate books, and just really gotten kind of engulfed into the real estate thing and just kept on reading and reading and reading. And that's how I got into it. It was honestly, my mentors were the books. So we lived in a small town outside of the Twin Cities, about an hour away. And then we moved into the Twin Cities. My wife took a job in the Twin Cities, and that kind of opened up the door for me to start investing because the real estate market just crashed. And it just made a ton of sense to start buying. When I was, everything I read, all the formulas, I would put down on a piece of paper and go, well, geez, I could buy this house for $60,000, and I'd have to put maybe $10,000 into it, but I knew what I was doing. I could do it myself, and I could rent this thing for whatever, $1,400 a month. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. And so that's what I started doing. I started buying these single family houses that were foreclosed on, and rolled from there. So.
Oh, that's great. And having that background too, being as handy as you were as a shop teacher and just, somebody that sounds like it probably been tinkering around since you were young. It made it easy for you to do the rehab yourself. Did you remember your first home, your first place that you actually bought, your first investment property?
Yeah. So I actually bought 3 houses all at one time.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a little crazy. And I didn't have any money, so that's or very little. So it kind of have to explain that a little bit. So the first house was a rental. And that one I bought for, I can't remember the exact price, but around $60,000, and had to put another about $10,000 into it. So we bought that with a loan, and then, had to put the money into it. And I think that's about the money that we had. We had a little bit more to buy a house for us to live in that we were going to flip while we were living there. So my wife and I bought this other foreclosure, and we bought that with an FHA 203K, yeah, I think that's what it's called, 203K, not to be confused with a 401K.
Right. This is the one where it has the construction money in there as well, right?
Yeah. So it's an FHA loan where you got to put 3.5% down, but it's purchase plus renovation, and it's only 3.5% down of the sum of those. And I think we had the closing costs paid for. So all in, we had maybe $5,000 of our money out of our pocket. So it was ridiculously low. And then the third property was a real flip that I wasn't living in, and I partnered with some people to get the money for that. So that was no money out of my pocket on that. So I bought 3 at one time.
And you did all this in your off time. I mean, how are you juggling all of this? This is quite a bit.
Yeah. So when I first bought those properties, those were, I think, in like July or maybe August. So it was summer break, but I was working a full-time construction job in the summers to put myself to keep bringing money into the family. So I was still working full-time, and after work, I would run out to the property and I would fix up the properties, both, actually all the properties. So I was literally working, more, just crazy hours. I would sleep from, whatever, midnight to 5 in the morning, and then get up and do it again. And that was 7 days a week. So
I'm sure your neighbors really loved you when you're working on these houses at like 12 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I would be. I literally, I would still be at these houses even till I remember. So we actually had our first daughter during this time. And I remember coming home at 3 o'clock in the morning, and going into my daughter's room, and she'd be crying, whatever, at that time, and I'd pick her up, and I hadn't even gotten to sleep yet, and bring her to my wife, and my wife would feed her, and then I'd bring her back to bed, and then finally I'd go back to bed. And then I'd get up and I'd go to start teaching, or when I was doing construction, doing the construction.
Oh, wild!
Yeah, it was fun.
Where'd you find the houses? The first 3 houses, and did you buy them like as a bundle, or just
Nope.
you just happened to get them all at the same? There's so many things going. Were the auctions? Did you you have agent represent? How did you find those properties?
Yeah, so it's just agents representing me that brought me into these foreclosures, and that's basically how I found it. And like I said, there were foreclosures, and it was right during the crash. So this was summer of 2008, And so, the world had ended, and, everybody was screaming for the doors, and I was running the other way.
Smart.
Yeah, it turned out to
Really?
be pretty smart. It's funny because when I was times have how they've changed, but when I was first doing this, probably up until about 2012 or 13, people would ask me what I do, and I would say, well, I'm a real estate investor. And they go, oh, I'm sorry to hear about that. So,
And you're going, I'm not.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's great. And so you mentioned the flip. Did you continue doing a lot more flips after this?
Yeah, so I didn't want to be a flipper, but it was kind of a necessary thing, at least at that time, because I didn't really have much money. So I did the rental property, like I said, and that went really well. And then I met a banker who showed me a way that I could continue to do some more rental properties. So I bought a few more rental properties, but at that time you basically couldn't get a rental property loan. You couldn't get more than 4 loans in your name. And you very tough to get a commercial loan in 2008 and 9. And so I ran out of capacity, both monetarily and, being able to get loans in my personal name. And so then I started flipping, and I started flipping houses, and eventually partnered with a few other people to get some more rentals, and then found a couple banks finally that would lend to me, do a commercial type loan. And then I again started buying rental properties. But what I would do is I would flip, 2 to 3 properties, and then use that income for a down payment on the rental.
What were you getting on the flips?
How much profit?
Yeah.
Yeah, they varied. On paper they were always 30,000 or more, but in reality they varied from 10 grand all the way up to I've made over 100 on a few flips, but I'd say on average probably 25.
That's pretty good.
But I was using investors and stuff like that. So honestly, probably my profit, and I had a business partner, so I had to share it with him. So probably my profit in the end of the day was 10 or so on a flip.
And how are you finding your investors?
Some of the early ones just came from, I guess, my business partner. So when I first started this business, I had a business partner, and that would flip with me. I guess he came on with me after about a year. So he started flipping then with me, and he found our first couple investors, and then it was word of mouth from there. We were successful and made money. People wanted to be a part of it. Meeting people at the real estate meetups, other networking stuff. One of I ran. I was a distance runner in college. And one of my coaches referred me to another coach that has invested with me many times and still invests with me a lot. So some just referrals like that too.
Oh, that's neat. That's neat. Now on flipping the houses, did they require a lot of construction, or was it just sort of a light rehab? Throw on some paint and turn it around. I mean, were you turning them around in a few months, or a longer period of time?
Yeah, I would say majority of the flips had construction between about $30,000 and $100,000.
Okay, gotcha.
So pretty good amount of work. And $30,000 in 2008, by the way, was a pretty substantial flip because you could get labor done for a lot less, and materials was cheap too.
Right. And were you doing it all by yourself, or did you start to develop a crew of people that you worked with?
Yeah. So to take you through, I think it was about 2009 where I started kind of, probably summer of 2009, where I started ramping up and saying, okay, I gotta really flip if I want to buy more rentals. And so then eventually that turned into, I got to start hiring people if I actually want to do more flips, because that there was times there during my flipping days where I was flipping, 15 properties at one time.
Gee whiz. Wow.
So I was running crews. I got my contractor's license, and I had several crews that would be going and doing these properties, and to be efficient at it. And even that was hard to be efficient as you get, trying to do 15 properties at once was definitely difficult. But it was all about building those systems and having the crews and trying to keep it as efficient as possible.
Now, there was some point, it had to be some point here where I mean, trying to juggle a full-time job and doing 15 flips at a time, where you had to make the shift, right, over to a full-time investor?
Yeah, so that shift happened before I ever did 15 flips. So I think it was the summer of 2010 was when I said, I'm done teaching. I went part-time so I might be missing a year here. So anyway, so I went part-time for 1 year where I was able to teach 0.6, which was really awesome. My wife said, yep, go ahead, do that. We still got the income. I had the rental income coming in. And then the following year, I quit my job. And the good thing with when I did that, so I think that was 2010. I had a lot of good rental income coming in. And I had the flips that were coming in, and I actually got my realtor's license. So now I could find the flips. So I was getting income from, that too. So I had some good income coming in, and I was able to show my wife, what the numbers looked like. And she gave me the blessing to finally quit my job. So.
That's great. That's great. Now, when you were looking at, I mean, you kind of started off, it sounds like, just to make a little extra money. And when you really saw the potential, it looked like you definitely did ramp up and just like sort of a full court press here. Did you, have sort of a plan, a specific plan in mind, or were we just kind of just handling what you could handle and as much as you could handle? How are you sort of managing that? When did you really start mapping out your strategy here?
So my plan from day one, from when I said, I'm going to do this, my plan was to quit my job. My plan was to buy 1,000 units as rentals. That was my goal. And I got distracted actually by doing the flipping. So that kind of actually derailed my plan a little bit. Once I started, flipping properties, you have to focus a lot on flipping. Flipping's a job. And so I did get a little distracted on that, but that's okay. It helped me build my rental portfolio, and that's how it was. But yeah, right from the start, Bill, I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a real estate investor. And honestly, it went fairly quick. I mean, when you think of it, I started, I think my first property was the summer of 2008. I went 2009. I quit my job in 2010. And I was all about being a real estate investor. That's what I wanted to do.
That's great. Now, were these properties in the beginning, were they close by you? I know it looks like you've got some out-of-state areas that you're in. Did you start off only in the Twin Cities, or did you start to broaden out pretty early on?
No, everything was in the Twin Cities up until 2016. So that's the first time I started buying out of state was 2016. So all my flips, all my rentals, all that whole portfolio was all Twin Cities based. So all within 40-minute drive.
Wow. And were you self-managing?
Yep.
On your rentals?
Yeah. Self-managing the rentals.
Gee whiz.
It sounds daunting, so I have, and I still actually own most of them. So at one time, I think, there was about 75-ish units, in the Twin Cities. Now I think I'm down to about 50-ish. And we still self-manage them, but it's all about the systems and teams that we have in place. And I probably only spend a few hours a week at the most on those rental properties. But I've got a bookkeeper in place. I've got showing agents that help me do showings. I still do a showing here and there. I've got my maintenance staff. So everything's in place to where I don't have to be at the properties day to day.
That's great. Have you thought of forming your own property management firm?
I had thought of it. But I'm no longer going to be doing it. I think it back in probably 2013-ish, 12, 13-ish. I was going to try to do a property management company with a couple partners, and just decided it wasn't where I wanted to be.
Right. Now, I mean, it's a very labor intensive type of
Yep.
company, and the margin is just pretty thin. So it's kind of tough to make money there. But some people do it when they have a lot of properties on their own to manage. That's why I was asking, because with 50 houses or 75 houses, I could see where having sort of a full-time staff in place just to do the management part of it would be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that definitely adds some efficiencies if you do want to take on some more people. And that was kind of the idea is, I might not make a ton of money, but it would help with efficiencies. And maybe would have been a smart thing to do. But at this point in time, I have no interest of doing it now.
Now, do you still do flipping at all?
I don't. And I'm not opposed to it. Our market, like many others in the U.S., prices have picked up. It's very hard to find off-market deals now, or any kind of deal. So it's not my focus to go find these deals. So I'm just not finding deals that work. If something fell on my lap, would I do it? Sure, I'd do it. But I don't want to spend my day focused on finding the deals, and that's what I would have to do in order to be successful at it.
Well, there's a couple of transitions here I wanted to just explore a little deeper. As one, in 2016, you mentioned you started buying out of state, and
Yep.
then two, and we kind of touched on it, but in your bio you talk about how you really have shifted to multifamily properties. So I don't know what came first there. Maybe you could kind of address both of those in your answer here.
Yeah, so they came at the same time. The shift was to multifamily and out of state. And the reason for out of state is just simply because the Twin Cities market fundamentally is very strong. So, got great fundamentals as far as employment and job growth and all that kind of stuff, and income and all that. But we've had a good market in multifamily for a long time. I mean, honestly, since the 90s, we had a little blip during the crash, but it wasn't a true, crash or anything in our multifamily. So our prices are really compressed. You're looking at a C-class property, and you're going to be buying it traditionally that it would sell at, let's say, an 8 cap. And now it's selling at about a 6 cap. There's just not a lot of value add, and that's where I'm at. I'm a value add investor, and there's just not a lot of value add. Like I said, we've been a good market for so long that I feel that most owners they've already raised their rents. They know that they can get $1,000 for a 2-bedroom in a C-class neighborhood, so that's what they charge. So there's just not a ton of value to be added in the Twin Cities. So that's why I stepped out of state to look for markets that had opportunity to add value and increase rents and do some good and positives with the properties, as well as, make some good money too.
And you started doing that in 2016 then?
Yeah. So I started doing that in 2016. I bought a dozen units in Milwaukee. And then I bought in 2016, I bought 2 properties in Cincinnati as well. And then since then, I've bought several more.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, comparing your multifamily properties to your single family properties, you still are happy with your single family, and you feel that it's definitely worth it to maintain those and keep those, or do you see a shift of maybe unloading those at some point?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that, because right now I've been just going through my portfolio and trying to figure out, do I want to keep, all these single families? They're 1 to 4. I call them single families. They're 1 to 4 units. So I just call them all single families because they're small. But so do I want to keep these buildings? Do I want to sell them? What do I want to do? And I I'm leaning towards offloading all my single families, along with a few duplexes that I don't like that much, and then keeping the rest of the duplexes and up to 4-unit buildings, which would still allow me a pretty good income with those, be extremely, easy to manage. I think it would take my buildings down to probably, what would it be, about 7 buildings, 6, 7 buildings, depending on what I keep. So I think I'm going to kind of do that, because here's the problem with single families, and this is single family especially. As you go to duplex and to 4-unit, maybe changes slightly, but there's just, the efficiencies are just not there, So I had one property, for instance, this year in our market. Again, our market's really strong, so I'll preface that by our market's really strong. Rents are really good. I've done 2 evictions in the last 3 years, and that's it. Out of all my properties, we've done 2 evictions.
Amazing! Wow.
Every tenant pays. Most of them pay on time. You're not chasing rents. I mean, our market is really strong. So anyway, I had a property just recently that one of my evictions, the tenant was behind after the eviction by just over a month. So it got into month 2. So that's honestly 2 months of rent. And then we go into the property and there's about, $5,000 worth of damages. Well, right there, this property only cash flows about $250 a month. So right there's nearly, that's about 2 years worth of income.
Yeah.
Potentially even, maybe actually a little bit more, because I had the eviction costs and all that kind of stuff. So there's the income's gone now. So that's the problem with the single families, is one little hiccup happens and the income disappears. I had a furnace go out on one of mine not too long ago. Well, there's $2,500. That's almost a year on that property. That's almost a year worth of income. So stuff like that, it just chews your income apart. And when you think, I'm going to make, $5,000 a month or $5,000 a year on this single family, in reality, you might make that 1 year, but the next year you might lose $2,000.
Right.
And so it really, you have to look at the big picture of these things, and they just aren't that efficient. The money's not there. And don't get me wrong, I've made great money on these single families, and I wouldn't take it back. But if I can go out and buy a multifamily, it just makes way more sense.
Yeah, the economies of scale, a world of difference,
Yeah.
especially you can get a good sized multifamily. You got one roof, you got one property, a tax payment, one insurance policy, as opposed to, the equal number of single family homes that you would have in units in that same building. There's no comparison. Definitely you might have a lower cost per door, but I think the efficiencies, like you said, are probably it's hard to match that.
Yeah, and right now I look at it, I can go and sell sell about 25 or so properties, 20 to 25 properties, and buy between 100 and 150 unit apartment building. To me, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great comparison there. Yeah. Well, looking at the time that you've been in this, and roughly it looks like from 2008 to the current time here, what would you say would be one of your biggest mistakes that you made in the process?
Yeah, there's so many that I could probably talk about, and we could probably make 2 shows out of that. But I'll talk about one that was a flip property. I bought this property, and then instead of actually doing the renovation and flipping it to end user, what I did is I actually advertised it for somebody to buy right away. And so they bought it, and I retained the contract to fix it. However, with that, I didn't really have a good, strong contract. We signed a very loose contract for the construction, not very detailed, didn't provide the proper lien waiver or lien rights to them. Change orders were done, basically by a handshake. They were over the computer, so we had a paper trail, but that didn't really matter. In the end of the day, we're a day from finishing. I gave them, their final bill, and they didn't want to pay their final bill, so they fired me the day before the end of we were finished. And then they tried to sue me.
Oh, gee.
So it ended up being a mess. I lost about $75,000 between what they owed me and my attorney fees and all that. And it was just a mess. And it was, quite frankly, there would be two ways it would have been avoided. One is I allowed them to to owe me probably too much money, not requesting more draws. So that was one. But the other was just not good, strong contracts. So trusting people is great, but trust them with, a contract in place.
And who drafted up the contract?
I drafted up the contract.
Okay, so you didn't have an attorney necessarily.
Use attorneys, and I use attorneys for everything now. Anytime I'm going to do a real contract, I use an attorney. And I love, for me, I'm of that mindset, and probably a lot of your listeners, if you've got a strong 50 plus base, a lot of the listeners are like the handshake. Let's just do business with the handshake. That's how it should be, right? You should be able to trust people.
Right.
I should be able to come up to you, Bill, and say, "Hey, Bill, this is what we're doing." Shake hands, and that's what we do. That's how I operate, but that's not the reality of the world. So you got to be smarter than that, and I just wasn't.
Yeah, that's definitely a key member of anybody's team is having good attorneys in place. That's great advice. Great advice. Well, conversely, what would you say is your biggest success to date?
Oh boy. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll talk about something that, kind of recently on the change of my business. I think that's a big success, going from these smaller single families to the multifamily. And, doing my first syndication was great to get that under my belt. After I did that, we raised just shy of $1 million when I did my first syndication. So just doing that transition from single family to multifamily, getting that mind shift, I think was really important. That, hey, this can be done. I don't need to graduate to all of a sudden shift. So yeah, I would say that would be the biggest thing. Is just that shift from single family to multifamily, and something that I would say your listeners should take from it is, you don't need to graduate. Like you don't need to start super small to get in the game. And I'm okay with people starting small, but if you're going to start small, and you want to be big eventually, well, then get there quickly. Go as quickly as you can to get to that. If your goal is to buy a 100-unit apartment building, don't wait for 8 years to buy one.
Right. I mean, there's plenty of people that out of the chute, they're buying 100+ units. I know it's a little foreboding for most people, but I tell people that are getting started, at least buy a fourplex. Start with a fourplex. It's just like buying a regular house. I mean, it's going to be as close to buying your own home as you have experienced before. So, but at least start off with multiple units, because you have all those built-in benefits there. You have one person, one unit vacant. You still have 3 others that aren't, and you have all the other benefits that come with the multifamily. So, I'm with you on that. I think once you start comparing, there is no comparison at a certain point.
Yeah.
And I've experienced a lot of the same things you have too. I had an air conditioning unit stolen that wasn't covered in my insurance, and to replace that, pretty much wiped out my cash flow for like a year and a half. And I'm going, gee whiz, if you just look at that property by itself, you go, this is not a great investment. But if you have multiple single family homes, they kind of balance out just like a multi-family property would be. But at the same time, if you just look at it at face value, it can be great. It can be great. I know people that have never had any problems, and it's the cash flow amazing. But it is one of those things that it doesn't take much to throw off the cash flow there.
Yep, exactly.
Well, we have a lot of guests that are obviously a little more senior in their age, that are 50 plus. Some of them are working, but they're approaching retirement and they're concerned about having the funds that they're going to need to really make their retirement work, and for both the short and long term. And then you have those that are already retired that are trying to deal with the funds that they have to make them last, to make the right investments. What kind of advice would you have for our audience that just from your own experience, that would be a great way for them to get started in real estate investing?
Well, first of all, this answer is going to, vary depending on the type of person we're talking about. You might have, I think everybody just needs to look at their portfolio and say, what do I have? Where's my income right now? If you're 50 and you're still working, you're making good income, well, that's a great position to be in. But if you're 65 and you've retired and you have a very, tight budget, well, that's a totally different position. So everybody needs to look at their own portfolio, but understand that there's a lot of options. I mean, you've got your IRA, 401k that you can potentially put into real estate or other assets. And to me, I think I've got a decent amount of investors of mine that are 50 plus. I think I love rental real estate. I mean, that's where I think it's at, is rental real estate. Apartments, like you said, 4 units or bigger. So if you can get into some rental real estate that's making you some good cash flow, I think that'll take care of you for a long time. They're not that difficult to deal with. People talk about the tenants and the toilets and the trash. You very rarely have to deal with that stuff. If you buy the right property, right? If you buy a D-class property in a D-class neighborhood, you're probably going to have to deal with that. But if you buy the right properties that are cash flowing, I think rental real estate's extremely, extremely attractive thing. Or passive investing too. It depends on, again, where you're at, what your appetite is. If you want to just be focused on going on vacations and traveling and visiting your family and not having to think about the piece of real estate, then do some more passive stuff. You can be a hard money lender. You can invest in syndications. You can, invest in triple net lease type properties. But still, those are still, I guess, hard money lending isn't really rental real estate, but the other two are still rental real estate.
Good advice. Good advice. Well, Todd, you look like you're off to a great start. I mean, buying when you bought and getting a sort of a jump start there, I'm sure helped you to leverage a lot to where you are today. Where do you see yourself in the next 10, 20 years with your company and your investing?
Yeah, so my 10-year goal is to have a minimum of $200 million in controllable assets, real estate. So more multifamilies, that equates to probably 2,500 to 3,000 units. And then my long-term goal is just to continue to do that. Continue to give back, and my passion is to provide or help people understand, more about their finances and more about basically how to be responsible, financially responsible. So I see it with my tenants, and it just I hate seeing it where you got that tenant that just they want to change, they want to make that difference, they just don't know how. And so that's one of my passions. So that would be definitely a goal of mine, is to be a part of an organization or potentially start an organization that really helps educate and get people to know financial freedom. And then my ultimate goal with that is to get it into schools.
God, that's great. That's great. That's something that I'm 100% supportive of. I feel the same way. I think and the schools is really a place where they should be teaching this stuff. Just so many kids come out of college even and don't have a clue about even how to balance a checkbook, or how to save, or how to leverage their money, or whatever it may be. And those are basic survival principles in today's world. So that's great that that's an interest area of yours.
It's up to the parents, right? And so it's just a continual track. right? So if you have no clue as a parent how to be financially responsible and how to invest in assets and all that kind of stuff, how are you going to teach your kids? You're just not going to. And so if the schools aren't doing it, the parents aren't doing it, who's doing it? And
Right.
and that's the cycle. It just continues. So the only people that know how to do it are the the kids that have parents that are financially responsible and understand it. So it's just that cycle. And to me, we need to break that cycle. And it's in the best interest of everyone for us to break the cycle.
That's great. That's great. Well, we have zipped along here pretty fast, unfortunately, because I have like 50 more questions for you. So, hey, fellow old dogs, before we jump into our wrap it up session, I just wanted to let you know that an important part of being a successful real estate investor is knowing how to regularly reduce your expenses. It's a big part of what I do every day to maintain a healthy real estate portfolio. Well, I try to do the same thing with my personal finances as well. And when I heard about a life insurance company that gives exclusive rates to those of us old dogs who try to eat right, exercise, and stay healthy, I got very stoked. Like saving money on your car insurance for being a good driver, Health IQ saves you money on your life insurance for living a health-conscious lifestyle. For those of us who are trying to be healthy and keep our expenses down at the same time, it just makes sense. Learn more and get a free quote at healthiq.com/old dog. That's healthiq.com/old dog. This is our section we call the Wrap It Up session. And it's kind of like a lightning round where we basically ask you a series of quick questions and you give us, quick answers so that we can have resources for our listeners that they can draw upon in the future and as they look at real estate investing as a means to help them in their retirement. So if you are ready, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Favorite real estate book?
Multifamily Millions by David Lindahl.
Great choice. Favorite business book?
How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Most valuable website for success outside of your own?
Yeah, my own. Bigger Pockets.
Yeah, I love Bigger Pockets.
Yeah.
How about favorite app?
I'm not a big app person, but probably my favorite app, the one I use the most would be either my podcast app, which is, I think, iTunes, or my Audible app.
Oh, great. Yeah, those are my most active, too. That's great. How about your favorite quote?
I might butcher this, but everyone has.
We'll look it up afterwards and put it in there the right way. So don't worry.
Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face by Mike Tyson.
I love it. That's great.
You're gonna get punched in the face if you decide to do this business or any business. You're gonna get punched in the face, and you've got to figure out what your plan is before that happens.
That's so great. That is a really, really good, timely advice there. And and learn from that punch in the face too. It's going to happen. So make it a learning experience and learn that much more for the next time. Maybe you can learn how to duck, or block. Well,
that's right. But even with that, you're 100% right. But you're gonna whether you're going to learn from that, and then there's going to be another thing that's going to come up, but you have to think about what can happen, and without being paranoid, right? But you have to think about what could happen, and then what's my reaction to that. So you have to think about plausible things that could happen and what the scenarios are, and what's my reaction to it, and be smart about it. If you're prepared, you're going to be a lot more successful than if you just get punched in the face and you're blindsided.
That's a great point. Great point. Think strategically. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, now here's the $1 million question here, and you started off pretty modestly, so you'll probably have a good answer here. But let's say you just lost everything, absolutely everything, all your assets. You're down to only $1,000 in cash. What would you do with that $1,000 to rebuild your real estate business?
Go to Vegas.
Buy Bitcoin.
Yeah. No. I would partner with people that know what they're doing, that have connections, that can help you along the way. But obviously, you have to also have value to them. So that would be the biggest thing. And quite frankly, that's kind of what I did when I got started. I partnered with people. I had a lot of investors that I partnered with. I had a business partner on quite a few of them. I had even I was buying rental properties, and each rental property I would bring in a partner with. I did that several times. So I would partner with people.
That's great. Now, just to maybe supplement that a little bit, where do you meet these people to partner with?
First of all, everybody knows people. And you don't think you know people that maybe would want to partner with you, but you do. So first, go into your own network and understand who your own network is. There's people in my own network that I've been shocked that they have an interest in what I'm doing, or they want to invest, or they do invest. And it's like, really? You? Okay, awesome. So first tap your own network, but second of all, start going to real estate clubs, start going to networking, business networking events. Get yourself out there and talk to people.
That's great. Well, Todd, there's a lot of people listening, I'm sure, that want to find out more about you, and or maybe have some questions, specific questions. Maybe they're even interested in investing in Twin Cities, or maybe syndication or something that you're doing. What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you, to reach you, ask you those questions?
Okay, so there's a couple ways. They can go on to my website, which is Venture D as in Dexheimer, D as in dog. Properties. Yep. So it's venturedproperties.com. They can also email me. It's todd@venturedproperties.com. And then I'm all over LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's probably the better one. Facebook, I tend to only accept people I know. And then I also have a podcast too, and that's called Pillars of Wealth Creation. They can go to pillarsofwealthcreation.com, or they can just search on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever they listen to this podcast on. Of course, listen to this one first, but then supplement it with mine.
Well, no, yours is great. I listened to it right before I talked to you. I didn't realize you had one until just today, and this is great. It's a great show. You have some good guests, good topics, so a lot of good stuff there. I would highly recommend it.
Cool, thanks.
Well, Todd, we have a tradition here for all of our guests that when we close out the show, we ask you to give us your best old hound dog howl.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I know. In Minnesota, I don't know if they have any hound dogs up there. I don't know. But, you just had to come up with your best try here to just see if you can just shake the rooftop here.
We have Timberwolves. That's what we have.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So let's give us your best old
and coyotes. I have coyotes that are right outside. My wife and I listened to a pack of coyotes probably take down a deer not too long ago. It was pretty interesting. So I'll give my best Timberwolf howl here. All right. You ready? You ready for this? It's going to knock everybody's socks off. So.
I'm still kind of thinking about the imagery of that those coyotes taking down the deer. Where do you live?
It is crazy. Just go on to like YouTube and search like coyote attack or something like that. We thought like our neighbor was being killed. It was wild. The noise, it sounds like a woman screaming.
No
it was crazy. So my wife is freaking out. I'm like, those are coyotes. She's like, no, there's no way. That's like our neighbor is screaming. Like, what is going on? I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure those are coyotes. You could hear every once in a while you would hear the bark. I'm like, yeah, that's for sure coyotes. So then I Googled it on my phone and played it, and it was exactly how it sounded. So
wow, we've got coyotes in our neighborhood here, and they just kind of roam. It's just like one or two at a time, but Man, a pack of coyotes, man, taking down a deer. I'm just like, whoa! I have to bring something with me next time I go on a walk here.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm totally getting distracted. I'm sorry about that. Okay, all right, we are ready. Now that you've had a good introduction to your howl here, we are ready to hear this pack of coyote howl that you do.
Okay, here's my howl. Ow, ow, ow. I've never howled on a podcast before.
Hey, there's a first for everything, especially on this show here. A lot of firsts.
I have a pretty good. I have a pretty mean dog growl. I used to be able to do some good sounds when I was a kid. I can do Donald Duck and all kinds of stuff. So.
Hey, you got to throw in a couple of those. Come on, let's hear these.
I've got it.
Let our listeners decide here.
I've got my 4-year-old son in training to learn how to do Donald Duck because my goal is by the time he's in kindergarten, I want him to be able to talk like Donald Duck. So.
Okay, yeah. Can you say something like, "Well, that's all, old dog listeners," something like that, and.
Oh boy! Get down, folks.
That's great. We're gonna have to end on that. Okay, we're gonna have to end on that. That is great. I love
it. Now nobody's gonna take me seriously.
I know. Well, we kind of kill it at the howl. That's why I tell my guests. I go, this is pretty much where everybody loses their credibility, even no matter what you've said.
That's funny. Oh, good times.
All right, Todd. Well, man, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun being on the show. I appreciate you having me on.
It's been great, and I also want to thank all our old dog listeners out there too for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you've taken the time to join us means a lot, and we greatly appreciate it. And please note, old dog listeners, everything presented here today, everything that Todd has talked about can be accessed in our detailed show notes on the Old Dogs website at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog. And then just look for the episode with Todd Dexheimer. Well, that's it for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.